right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of Rent Free. I am so excited to see your guys' responses to the first episode. I am just overwhelmed with hearing your guys' feedback, and I think it's really cool that you guys liked it because I liked it so much. And it's just been such a process to get started. So now that we're here, I love that, I can just come up here and chat with y'all whenever I want to. So this week's episode is going to be kind of like a follow-up to last week's episode. I think I was laying the foundation, so we could start off on a good foot, and you guys know kind of like where I come from my perspective and like what makes me who I am and my work ethic and those sorts of things. And then today I wanted to be more of like a resource podcast for you guys, just because I know how confusing it is to get your real estate license. Like, there's so many different avenues you can take. There's a billion different steps, and it's hard to know what's real and what's not, and what's the best, most cost-effective thing, and, out of all the options. I hope that this can serve as that for you guys, maybe like as a more in-depth resource, or if you're just looking for opinions on different kinds of classes and different kinds of ways to go through the process, then this will be that. I hope to also kind of shed light on what I've used to kickstart my real estate career, because I think that's also a missing piece in a lot of mentorship. It's like, okay, here's all the things you need to do, but then you're a realtor and you're like, all right, but what's next? Like, how do I get clients? Like, how do I actually do things that will work, instead of just, people always say like, oh, you got to get your name out there, you got to work your sphere. It's like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? And so we'll talk about that too. To begin, I think, if I can just say a little bit about what my real estate journey was like and how I did it, just because I think that's also important. I know last week I told you guys some details about it, but I think ultimately I did the whole thing in 2 months. And so that was my licensing process. And I would say I was on one of the quicker sides of all of it. Like, I think a lot of times it takes a lot longer than that. And I did that intentionally. I was planning to get my license over the course of my summer break. And so, of course, I wanted to do it quickly. And so when I started doing my process, I picked an online platform that was self-paced, and I had no background experience. I was a psychology major, as you guys know, so it's not like I had a business background or any internship experience or like anything like that. I was just as new as anybody else. And I dove into it. I spent 2 weeks doing the actual course, a little under 2 weeks it took me. I think I did 7% each day. And then I had to take my tests. I failed once, so that added like another week to the process, but all was said and done within 2 months. So I know that's a possible option, but that's also not the most ideal option for some people. And that also doesn't answer the question of like, oh, how did I pick my course? And how did I know what to do? And all of the steps that are in between and intertwined with that process. So that's what we'll be going through here. I also think that there's no right or wrong answer to these things. So as I'm like explaining the different options that I've heard throughout my time in this business, just know that like there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It just matters what works for you. And the reason that I love real estate, as you guys know, is because it's so adaptable to other things in your life. Like, you can be a teacher, you can work a 9 to 5, you can work overnights, you can have your own business, you can just make real estate your sole thing. Like, you can do it with any number of different jobs. And along with that, you can do your coursework and education the same way. So hopefully you guys get that and understand that, this is what you want it to be. And of course, I guess that's the nice part about real estate. It's like your own business, your own brand. You get to build those things. So without further ado, let's talk about the steps of the licensure process. And the thing I wanted to mention too is, like, in short form, I do have a pinned video that has lived on my TikTok for years. And before that was there was one that was just like it, but that I had recorded right when I started posting on TikTok. So if I had it up at this point, it would be 4 years old. I have one now that's up that's about like a year and a half old, but it goes through all of the steps in the licensure process, just in a little bit less of an explanation. So if you ever feel like you want to recap or anything like that, that video is there too, instead of this like more long form episode. I'm going to start with the first thing, which I kind of deem as optional. And this is not even something that I did. I know like looking back in hindsight, there's a lot of things that I probably would have done differently or that I tell others to do differently because I just recognize that I might have gotten lucky in some areas and things worked out for me, but there were a lot better, maybe more smarter and educated ways to go about things, which I'll explain more about later on. But, looking back, I think it's a great idea to get some pre-education before you even go into your licensing process, because a lot of times real estate and being a realtor is not what people expect it to be. And I think it's important to have a better idea of like what your actual day-to-day will look like before you decide to spend the money and invest the time to get your license. And what I mean by that is like you can shadow realtors, you could work at brokerages, like at their front desk if they have positions available. You could just meet up with someone that that works in real estate and get coffee, like start networking a little bit. Like any of that stuff is all optional, but it's wise. I would say I did not do any of it, but I still can recognize that doing those things might save a lot of people from getting themselves into a career that they don't actually like, because what the media portrays our job to look like is not really what it looks like. And you're selling sunsets and $1 million listing is not your average agent. So we have to make sure we're having like correct expectations. And so that's an optional thing that you can do there. But the actual first step towards getting your real estate license is taking a pre-licensing class. Whenever I started to get into this, I was like confused by that because it says pre-licensing. I thought it was optional as well. It's not. That's just what they call the class that you take to get your real estate license. So if you were like me and you're like, wait, do I have to do this? Yes, that's a requirement no matter what. Where it differs is every state has different requirements. So like, for example, in Maryland, it's a 60-hour course. I know in Texas and California, it's in the hundreds for their hours of coursework. So it takes them a lot longer to take the course, obviously. Even if you'd done it the way I did it, it would still take twice as long because it's almost 3 times as long, which is bizarre. And obviously that has to do with the state size. Like Maryland is an itty bitty small state, whereas Texas is huge. Same with California. And so you have to take those things into account as well when you're trying to pick the things that you're going to do. I kind of feel like the way I took my course was like a marathon, and it was absolutely not sustainable. Like if that course was twice as long, I don't know that it would have worked because I was going hours and hours and hours for days and days and days. And the only reason I was able to do that is because I was like, okay, it's just 2 weeks. And once 2 weeks is over, I'll be good. So knowing that, I think that if I lived in Texas and California, I might not do it this way. And that's fine. But the courses that you take can be online or in person. You have the option to choose whatever you prefer to do. I always think this kind of goes to your learning style a bit more than anything else, because if you think about like the way that you learn in a classroom, that's pretty traditional. And then other people, I think, learn better asynchronously, like without an instructor or without a classroom surrounding them. And I could do both. I like both. I know from like college experience, like I've taken asynchronous classes and I'm motivated enough on my own to get those things done. Some people aren't. Some people need the reminders, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like your learning style, And so those are great options. I would say that the ones that are in person, you're probably going to learn more easily, but it'll take longer. Usually those are weeks and weeks and weeks or months and months and months of courses. But of course, if you're doing it online and by yourself, you can do it as fast or as slow as you want to. So that's a nice plus there too. The programs in person, typically more expensive. Again, they're paying an instructor to teach you versus just that asynchronous course format. So they both have their pros and cons. Like I said, I was concerned about time. I wanted to get the course done before I went back to school in the fall. And that was my main concern. And also money, because I was a college student. I was like, had my savings. That's what I was using to pay for my licensure process. So I was like, let's make this as cheap as possible. I want to say the CE shop was like the first thing that popped up when I looked, and I really loved it. It's very aesthetically pleasing, so it's easy to navigate. You can easily figure out what you're trying to find and all that, which for me was like important just because the material was already kind of like confusing enough. And so I picked the CE shop, didn't do much research on any other places, which again is something if I could go back, I probably would have. I got really lucky. I loved the CE shop and I still use it. Like anytime I have to do continuing ed, I just did mine for the second time this past August, did all my CEs with them. It's always affordable. And I always have my code linked for you guys, which you can use. I use it for myself too. It's the 35% off coupon for the CE shop. And like they always run sales like that. So that's always linked to my bio if you're looking for something. I also just created this real estate document, which I think is so cool. It's not a real estate document. It's just a document that I'm using for real estate resources. But essentially I was thinking the other day about how there's no like starter kit when you get your license. There's no like, okay, here's lead generation apps and here's apps to buy business cards or websites to buy business cards and marketing materials. And I was like, that doesn't exist. Like, why not? And so I created one. It's like 6 pages long right now, and it has like property management resources, real estate education resources, some free, some not. It's just all kind of stuff that people have mentioned to me as good resources or I've used myself. And so I have like the details there. I have any coupons or discounts linked. And of course it's just a Google Doc. It's free in my bio, but I just made that and I am like pumped about it because I think it's going to be really cool to continue to add to. Sorry, a little tangent there for that document, but they always have discount codes is what I was trying to say. And you can find them there or on their website or whatever. There's other great websites I've heard of, like Real Estate Express, which I think is now Calibri Real Estate. I don't know how to say that. There's Aceable Agent, which I've heard is great too. I just obviously don't have the personal experience, so I always talk about the CE Shop just because I love it. But that's basically your first step, right? So you take that class, you do however long it is or however long you're planning to do, depending on the format. And once you're done with that, you're going to have a pre-licensing exam. And that exam goes along with whatever academy or course you decide to take. And so depending on that, I know the format of which you take the test is probably different. For me with the CE Shop, they gave the option to do it online and proctored. And so basically I picked my test date and time, and then I would show up at the test date and time on my computer. I had to have like a very clean background, and it's like any other proctored exam. And then the proctor like watched me through the camera while I took my exam, and I ended up passing the first time. I hate the format of these tests, not the format of the test, but the way that the pre-licensing exam is, because you only get 2 attempts. And if you don't pass after that, you have to retake the entire course. That is so like, I already have test anxiety. Like I hate taking tests, and you're trying to tell me that now you're going to put that over my head. Like, okay, better get it right this time, because if you don't, then you've one more chance. It's like, that's terrible. So anyway, that's the reality of it. And I passed the first time, and then it took like a day or so for it to register within the Maryland system that like I had passed. And then after that, I was able to schedule state and national exams, which these exams are confusing, I think, to people as well, because they're 2 separate exams, but they're taken at the same time. So you like sit and you do both portions like right there in one sitting. But if you fail one, you can still move on to then take the next. So that did not make sense the way I worded it. What I meant is that like I failed state my first time, and when I came back to take it a second time, I only had to take the national. So they're separate, if that makes sense, but you can take them at the same time. But again, I'm not sure the modalities, that's the word I was looking for, that they would have these in nowadays. I took mine during COVID and I still took it in person, so I know that that's probably still an option. And you just go to a testing center, they'll help you schedule it. It should like be pretty cohesive in the way that like, okay, you take your class, then they give you the exam, then it prompts you to schedule your other exams. Not like you'd like go looking for these things. And then, so however you decide to take your exam, you can do it. I think you could probably do it from home or in person. And they will tell you right then and there if you passed or not. They'll give you a little printout with your picture on it. I still have the picture. I use it for a ton of TikToks all the time of like the day I got my license in my car, and I was like cheesing with the paper printout that they gave that said I passed. And so they tell you right then and there, and at that moment, you are officially a licensed realtor. But at that point, you still cannot practice real estate legally until you're affiliated with a brokerage. And this piece I also want to like emphasize could be different depending on what state you live in. I'm speaking from a Maryland realtor's perspective. So just like if you've heard other things that have been a part of this process, for example, in some states they have post-licensing. So even after this, you would have to do some more educational requirements before you could be a realtor. We don't have that in Maryland. The other thing I've also heard of being a requirement is fingerprinting. Did not have that required in Maryland. So there's a few things I've heard from other people. So just be like warned of that. But in Maryland, we have to affiliate with a brokerage in order to practice, which meant that I had to find somewhere that I wanted to work. And the brokerage aspect of finding out what you're supposed to do here is confusing, because when you go into any other job interview, you're expecting that person to be like interviewing you, right? But with real estate, it's different because the pay structure, it's like they're not making money unless you're making money. So if you're making money for them, they're going to want you regardless. You know what I'm saying? They're not losing anything by having you as a realtor. And so unless it's like a very luxury brokerage that has like a select few agents, or maybe it's a team that has like an interviewing process or something like that, otherwise every like brokerage is going to want you as an agent. They're not going to like turn you away. And so that means that you need to go into it with your best interest in mind. And instead of them interviewing you, you need to interview them. And so I always say, like, have your, figure out what it is that you're wanting out of your brokerage. And that could be a ton of different things. Like, you could want mentorship, or you could want a low commission split, or you could want new member education. There's so many different things that could be important to you. And whatever it is, that's fine. You just have to find someone that's going to be a good fit. Personally, when I signed with a brokerage, again, this is one of those things that I must have just gotten lucky because I affiliated with the first brokerage that like looked good to me. And that was not a good idea, probably. I should have interviewed with other ones. And that was just my mistake as like a newbie. But honestly, it worked out really well. I love my brokerage, and they're 100% commission, which means that I just pay them a flat fee for any transaction that I do. No matter if it's $1 million or $5,000, it's all the same. And I love that because when you're on a ratio split, like say they take 25% and you get 75%, if you're going, the more money you're making, the more money they're making. And like something doesn't sit right with me about those kinds of splits. So really got lucky where I'm at. They also required mentorship, and there were a lot of great perks and things like that. But it's up to you to decide kind of like, what do I need from my broker in regard to support? Like, what do I need from them? Do I want a really hands-on broker? Do I want someone who's going to have rigid requirements? Or do I want someone who just doesn't really care and like has less involvement? I don't know. These are things that you can think about. But basically, you'll go and interview with those brokerages. You can do it in person. You can do it over the phone. You can do it over email, however you feel comfortable. And you're just going to express your interest and ask for a moment of their time to like chat about things. And so that's when you go have that interview where you would be interviewing them, and you would then compare and decide which one was going to be the best for you. And like I said before, there's no right or wrong. It is just based on what is going to be the most effective brokerage for you. So once you affiliate with a brokerage, they're going to have a fee. There's always the fee with a brokerage. And so you have to pay that fee in order to affiliate. And here come all of the other costs that you have to have, or that you have to pay for. And I didn't realize how many things would be included in this until obviously I got my license. I would say if you're planning to get your license, I would save like $2,000 or $3,000 ahead of time, because all of the affiliations are going to total about that much. And it would suck to have gotten your license, but then not be able to practice real estate because you can't pay for the other affiliations and things like that. And you need them in order to do your job. And like, I mean that, like, there's nothing you can kind of like skimp out on or anything. Like, you have to have MLS access, which is the multiple listing service. So that's how you see all the properties that are on the market and like schedule showings and stuff. The showing time for me is how, Central Lock and showing time, I guess, technically, are the way that I access the homes. So like we enter our codes on the lockboxes and we get in. That's how we do all that. I have a county real estate board that I'm a part of, which is another requirement. You have to be a part of a county's board. They provide your forms for you. And so there's all different kinds of things like that total, at least in Maryland, about $2,000 to $3,000. And they're recurring costs. So that's something that comes up each year. They're not always the same cost, and usually they're cheaper depending on, that first year I would say is probably the most expensive, but they are recurring costs. And so I never care, because I think that it's like, okay, $3,000 a year, but you make $10,000 off one house. I think I can stomach that, right? Like, if I sell even like more than one house a year, my costs are covered and I'm making a lot of money, right? And so I always do that with this sign over here. I always poke it. You guys, audio listeners, don't know that, but I talk with my hands so much, and then I just like hit everything. Sorry about it. That is kind of the licensing process. You take your tests, you affiliate with your affiliating things, all the things that you need to do there, and then you're able to practice. So that brings us to the point where you're like good to go in terms of legislation, I guess. But like mentally, you're like not good to go. You're like, wait, actually, I'm more confused than I was before. Like, what do I do now? Because I'm just on my own. And so I think that might also be a confusing thing for some, where it's like you expect that because you're affiliating with a brokerage that they have some sort of role in getting you clients or like keeping you on a schedule or, doing things like that. And like I said, some might, but from my experience, brokerages more often than not, like 99% of the time, do not provide you leads unless you're on a team or some other kind of brokerage. Like usually that is completely up to you to figure out how you're going to get clients. And that's the hardest part of this job, because depending on who you are, who you know, where you live, what the market's like, getting clients can be really hard. And like from my experience, I was 19 when I got my license. And so I wasn't like walking through my sphere of influence, which means anybody you like know, essentially, whether it's business or personal connections. I wasn't like walking around all these opportunities because my friends are sophomores in college. Like we're not buying houses. And then of course their parents are like not really trusting, or at least I don't think they would be. I don't think I had the opportunity to have like a friend's parents sell or buy. But regardless, it was just like my sphere of influence wasn't it for me because I was a teenager. And so I knew I had to figure out other ways to get my clients and do things. And that's what I mean about it being adaptable. Like it doesn't really matter who you are. As long as you're a licensed realtor, you can make it work for you because there's so many different avenues of marketing, advertising, like expressing your value or giving your value to people so that they can see that, just different ways of connecting in the space, I guess. And it just takes figuring out what works for you and like what is enjoyable. Because again, you don't want to do something that is like not fun. Like I personally, of course, use social media. Like I'm sure you guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that. Like I am a social media girl. That is how I market. I love it because it's free and it lets me be creative and it's fun and I like editing. Also like having an audience, of course. And so there's a lot of stuff I love about that. I personally would hate to cold call. That's just not for me. Like I don't want to sit there and cold call. But for some people that like they'd like that structure. They like that like checking box sort of thing. And then on the other side of that, you have door knocking. You have like paid ads in newspapers. You have like billboard. Like there's tons of ways to advertise for yourself. It just depends like what you're trying to get out of it. I didn't want to spend money on marketing in the beginning, which is why I leaned into social media. It was kind of an accident. Like I didn't intend to have a big following. Has my flashlight been on this whole time? I just noticed that was on. I really hope that was not on the whole time. Anywho, all in all, and I'll get into what specifically worked for me too, because I think that's really important to highlight. And while I recognize everyone's experience is different, everyone's market is different, like so you might not be able to like replicate my results. I still want to tell you guys like exactly what worked for me because, why not? Like let's talk about the things that actually work. There's too much of what doesn't work out there. And I think that's kind of not helpful sometimes. So essentially, you're going to want to find your niche and you're going to figure that out by trying trial and error. Maybe you have natural interest in being creative, or maybe you like using your like person skills, people skills, and like walking door to door, or maybe you want to host events or, whatever it is. And then you also have to think about your budget. And like I said before, like I wanted to do something that was free, something that was not going to cost me a bunch of money because I was in college, and then something that I actually enjoyed doing as well. And so I started with Instagram and Facebook, and I was posting 3 times a week. I did this as a way to build my presence while I was not selling real estate, because you guys may or may not know I was at school for a year as soon as I got my license. Like I was out of state, wasn't able to practice. So I was just trying to do whatever I could to like kind of build my name in the business, get the word out, kind of a thing. And then also I wanted something to show for myself, because if I had clients that came to me that wanted to work with me, I didn't want them to look me up and be like, oh, this girl clearly is like brand new. So over the course of that year, I built my social media account. And then it wasn't until I had like already sold a few houses that I started posting on TikTok, because I was just blown away by like how amazing of an opportunity it was. And just like, I was 19, so of course it was crazy, right? And so I think that that was how I fell into social media, but I also have always had a knack for creating. And like, I had a YouTube channel when I was in 7th grade that had like 10,000 subscribers, and I like loved creating and editing. And I've always done social media for my therapy practice. Like, I just do it out of like funness, like just interest in it, I guess. And so I really leaned into it. And that worked. Didn't really get me clients, but who knows how that kind of like rubbed off on people. And then of course the TikTok piece of it now is huge. That is my main lead source. And so on one end, that's something that kind of worked, kind of didn't work, and then really worked. Like the Instagram didn't really help, but the TikTok surely did. And it's just been a really great and fruitful avenue for real estate, and then also for connecting with other real estate professionals. So like having access to people out of state. I do a lot of referrals for people that live or move out of state, or people that follow me on TikTok that are looking for a realtor out of state. So there's really great opportunities there, regardless of which way you're trying to go, is if it's referrals or for your personal business or whatever. Other thing that I did that really, really worked for me was using lead generation services. This is another thing that is going to be on that document that I mentioned to you guys at the beginning of the episode. I have as many as I've heard of on there, but I'm always open to adding more. So if you guys have one that you've worked with and have liked, let me know and I'll add it to the resource list. But OpCity was the thing for me when I started with my real estate license. Like, I was so shocked at how well it worked for me because it seemed so easy. Like, essentially OpCity is this app, and unfortunately, they're on a wait list right now, as I've heard through you guys. So if you're looking for an app, I wouldn't start there maybe, but it was really great when I used it in 2021, because basically they would send you a lead, and I mean, like, it would pop up on your phone as a notification, and it would say blank budget, this location, this time frame, and you would be the first person to accept the lead. And then when you accepted the lead, they would connect you on the phone immediately. You talk to the client right then and there. I would always set up a search. Usually it was buyers. Like, typically it wasn't sellers, because I think that they get the people that are looking at their listings on the website, and then that's how the clients. Anyway, so I would connect with the client. I'd send them a search. We'd start working together immediately. It was great. I did 13 transactions with them my first 3 months in real estate. Like, it was mind blowing to me, and I loved it. I will say, like, they take a hefty chunk of your commission. They take 35%. But again, I was like looking for something. I wanted experience. I wanted so badly just to like do a showing, just to like have an open house, just to do something in real estate and like learn, because I wanted the experience. And so when I started on OpCity, it started with like really low budget renters. And I think that's where people get turned away. But what people don't recognize is that it functions off an algorithm. So the quicker you are at accepting leads, the more leads you accept, and the better you are with your leads, the more and better ones they give you. And I'm talking like quickly. Like, it was day 2 that I started getting $300,000 budget buyers or more, even, because that first day I was on the app, I was accepting everything. I didn't care what it was, because I just wanted the experience. So it ended up being a really great experience for me. That's how I started my TikTok journey too. I posted all about how I was just blown away at the money I was making. And I loved it. Now, I recognize not everyone wants to give away pieces of their commission, but some business is better than no business. I think we all know that. And there's also tons of other apps out there. So some you can pay for leads up front. Some you can pay at the closing table. There's all different kinds of structures and things out there. So maybe it's just a matter of finding one that works for you. But highly suggest, if you're looking to just like even get involved, like, that's a great place to start. And the third thing, and the only other thing that I've ever done for marketing or for finding clients that has worked for me in the past. So as we kind of reiterated, I had the social media, I had the lead generation apps, and now this third piece of the puzzle is actually Facebook groups. And I know that sounds so stupid, because like Facebook is very, I don't know, it is just what it is, right? But I've always been on Facebook like since I was in like 5th grade, and I like use it basically for family. Like, it's what I think a lot of people in my generation do, where it's like, here's what I've done this summer. Here's like exciting new announcement, new job, like whatever, for family. And so I've always been on it, but I started looking around, and I ended up finding a lot of groups that were like rentals or housing roommate groups, or like Anne Arundel County rentals. That's where the county that I grew up in. And so like there's a lot of different things like that where people are searching for housing and they don't recognize that like realtors can help with rentals. And then a lot of times those renters turn into buyers. And I don't even mean like, oh yeah, once their lease is up next time they'll buy. Sometimes they just don't understand how buying works and they don't think it's possible for them. I have helped so many first-time home buyers who never thought they could buy, but it just takes a lot of education and stuff that unfortunately we're not taught in classes or in high school or whatever. And so you really have to like be able to provide that value for people. Underneath everything that I'm talking about today, providing value is the thing that you're working from. I swear, if you figure out a way to provide value, you will be golden. People really respect people who can just tell them the truth, tell them like the things that they need to know to have the best bang for their buck, and people that do it like genuinely. And if you look at my TikTok videos, I make a lot of content for home buyers where I'm like, hey, did you guys know that in Maryland you can get up to $20,000 of your student loans paid off? Because no one fucking talks about it. But it is the coolest program that we have in our state. It's genuinely a good program. I almost used it for my house. And it's just like insane. And people don't know about it, right? So that is my way of providing value via social media. In this rental page, what I do is often people will ask questions. People will be curious about how to even start buying houses. I've hosted webinars that I advertise to these groups where I say, hey, come learn about how to buy a home affordably in 2024. Like, something like that where I'm providing value to them. I'm not asking them for money. I'm not asking them to do anything. I just want to give them the information that they're looking for. And by doing so, it builds a trusting relationship with these people because they recognize, hey, like this person actually isn't just here for the money. They're trying to help me learn and understand. And that's where I've always thrived, I guess, as far as like, it's not every time going to work out. Sometimes you might be giving your time to people and it's not giving you something in return. But the times that you do get those clients, it feels really great because it's built off of that like genuine trust and all of that good stuff. And so those three things are the avenues I have used and still do use. I haven't really used many lead apps recently, and I'm not in the Facebook groups as much these days just because TikTok has become such a proponent of my lead source. But I would go back to it. If I had lulls in like consistency from TikTok, absolutely I'd be back on the lead apps. Absolutely I'd be back in the Facebook pages. And as I said and will say again, nothing wrong with any of these things. Like I don't care if you've been in the business 50 years and you're still doing these things. Find the things that work for you and stick to it. Like nothing wrong with that at all. Just do what feels right and what makes sense for you. And so basically, I think I did a good job of illustrating like how, you get your license, but then also how you can build your business after you've gotten your real estate license. And I hope you guys see those as like real tangible things that you can try doing. Because I know that when you start, people are like, yeah, just cold call. And you're like, okay, but who? Who am I calling? Like, or go door knock. And they're like, oh, you're like, okay, but like how many times and where? Like these pages and apps and things that I'm talking about are real things you can go sign up for or do right now. And I hope that that's helpful because I know like that feeling of being eager to start and want to do this, but like not knowing where to go. And so hopefully those things help you guys. Before we end today's episode, we're of course going to do the questions. So last week, I told you guys that I'm going to be posting on my Instagram with like a poll for questions, but I figured it would be better just to put a standing link in my bio so that you guys can always know where it is and ask questions if you have one that you think of. So if you go on like my link tree, which is linked on my Instagram, my TikTok, my YouTube, anywhere, it's right underneath the first link. So the questions that we have gotten so far, I'm going to pull those up. Just got a few questions this week, which is totally fine. I am actually so sleepy, so I am going to try to answer these and then I'm going to end the episode there. So the first question is from Nikita and she asked for advice for cold calling. And unfortunately, like I don't know that I have the best advice because of the fact that I've never like used it as a staple. I think I've probably like tried it like once. But like I said, and hopefully you heard in this episode, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. That wasn't my personal preference. What I will say with cold calling though, is that it's painful in some ways because people don't do it in the most efficient way. I think that if you had like a pen and a paper and you were like writing down the numbers and like trying to track how you're calling people, that would drive you crazy. At least it would drive me crazy. I'll say that. And there are really great softwares out there that are amazing for cold calling where you can input your numbers. They'll automatically call them. If it goes to voicemail, it'll leave a voicemail that you've pre-recorded for you. And you can skip the calls that aren't answering, or, it's so much easier. I don't know off the top of my head what the names of those softwares are. I like want to say like Vulcan is one, or like maybe even Follow Up Boss. You want something, I think it's called a skip dialer. But anyway, all I'm trying to say there is that there's a lot of softwares out there that make it so much easier and more enjoyable and like productive. And so if you're gonna make cold calling a piece of your business model, please get some sort of software like that. I just feel like otherwise it would be unbearable. But that again is just my opinion. And then we have Sandra, and she asked, do you see yourself becoming a broker? Interesting question. Good question. Probably not. I don't think. So as far as my real estate journey goes, like I've always kind of intended, I'm never going to not have my license. I think that it'll always be something that I keep up with just because it's such a nice resource to have, especially because I can represent myself on my own purchases. And like, that's enough for me, like I love that. But also I want to invest in real estate. And so I want to be able to be connected to the space still. And I want to slowly transform to just investing, where like I'm not actively looking for clients in real estate. The only thing that I have to say is that I can't see myself ever turning someone down that's like looking to buy a house or sell a house or something like that, And so regardless, like I'll always have my license, but because I want to get more into the investing side and make that like the main thing that I do in this business, that just kind of means that like being a broker wouldn't really like be a benefit to me. I get my mentorship fix from my brokerage because I'm one of the mentors there. And I really like that, where I have like a few people that I help. But I think having a whole brokerage would kind of like be too much for me. And it's not really where I want to spend my time, I guess, is like the best way of putting that. But yeah, so I hope that answered your guys' question. And like I said, you guys, if you have questions, put them on the form. I am an open book. You all know that. I will tell you anything that you want to know. And I appreciate your guys' feedback. And I'm glad that you have been liking the podcast as much as I have. So I'll see you guys next week, next Friday. Going to continue releasing the episodes on Fridays. Seems to be a good day to do it. And yeah, I don't know. I'll see you guys next time.